It's such a thrill to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So we will talk about the Stockton Inn, don't you worry. But
Oh.
since I have you,
Mhm.
I we really have to, talk about a little bit about your beginning and where you're from and how you got to where you are. So where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Waynesboro, Virginia. I have no memory of that at all. So my first memories of childhood are in Erie, Pennsylvania. My dad was an engineer, and so when we were in Erie, he was with GE, and then we moved to Dallas, Texas for a while. So I was there Dallas in the 70s, if you can imagine that. So it was pretty cool. And then in like the late 70s, like 79, 80, we moved to Seattle. And I lived in a suburb, Redmond, Bellevue. Those are the main suburbs there. And my dad started working for an aeronautical company called LDEC, and that's where he worked on the black box, and he we traveled a lot. We moved a lot because of his work. And then I went to Washington State University.
What were you studying there?
I wanted to be. At first, I wanted to be a journalist. Like I wanted to be a writer. Jack Kerouac was a big influence on me as a kid. But my freshman year in college was kind of like Animal House. So I spent the rest of my time, I was deficient my first year, my first semester, and I spent pretty much my entire career trying to get above a 2.0 grade point average just because mine was so low. Um,
By the way,
and
that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
yeah, I ended up majoring in humanities and minoring in English, and that just gave me a chance to study a lot of different things when I was in college. And then when I was in high school, my going into my senior year in high school, I came out to New York to visit my brother Danny, and so I'm like 18 years old. This was like the greatest trip of my life. Like I remember landing and going meeting my brother at a bar, and he was like, "Go order us some beers," and I was like, "Me? You want me to go order beers?" And I was like, and I walked up there, and they gave me beers and had some barbecue, and it was like the most magical trip of my life. I even got taken by a three-card Monte dealer, and I lost $100. Like,
You still wanted to come
2 days. Yeah, I came back and I told my dad, I was like, this is the best trip of my life. I was like, I'm going to move to New York when I get done with college. And I remember at the time my dad said, he goes, the worst decision I ever made in my life was letting you go to New York City.
back.
And so when the day that I was leaving to New York to go be with Danny, he was like, let me give you some advice. And he was like, screw them before they can screw you. And I was like, Dad, if I actually believe that, why would I get out of bed in the morning? Like, I don't want to think the whole world is against me.
Oh.
So, I went to New York very doe-eyed, and um, I fell in love with the city. And I mean, I was there for over 30 years.
Yeah,
So,
I know. I feel you. I always wanted to go to New York when I was little. That's the first stop right after graduate school. I headed to New York. But when I was there, I went to college very close to New York, and it at that time I could drink legally at 18. There was a grandfather clause, so 18, 19. I think I'm a little older than you, but yeah, it was so easy. So going up to a bar and getting a drink was fine because I
I
was
can't
grandfathered in, and then they changed it.
I can't imagine going to college in New York City. Like,
Oh, I was
I
cl- I was
I
in New Jersey. I was closer
I
to
could I
Stockton.
could I couldn't focus in the middle of nowhere in Pullman, Washington. New York City would be quite the distraction. So I give a lot of people that go to NYU a lot of credit for graduating because I don't think I could have been one of those people.
Well, I know that from doing my research, that your first, and please tell me if I'm wrong, your first experience behind the bar was in New York.
Yeah, yeah. My first bartending job was Grove. Was
Yeah.
this place on the corner of Bleecker and Grove, right next to, I think it's still there, the Pink Teacup.
Yeah, I remember. And I heard Benny's Burritos,
Benny's Burritos was the first time I really got to work with alcohol. Like,
which is like one of my favorite places of all time. I love Benny's Burritos.
God. Yeah. Uh, That's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like if you pull back the curtain, you'd be shocked at what you
Don't tell
see
me. Don't
there.
tell me. Um,
Because when I was at Grove, it was just wine and beer, and
okay.
then by the time I left, they slowly started to bring alcohol behind the bar. But I had already left and gone to Benny's Burritos, and Benny's was like when I was there, I was like making margaritas with lemon X was our citrus in the slushy machine, and then I like one day I just happened to look at the bottle and I was like, this is Durango liqueur with tequila. I'm like, this is not even tequila. And it was like $8 a bottle. And then I was like, how come we don't just buy regular tequila? I was like, let's just get Durango tequila. And they were like, well, that's $7 a bottle. And I was like, well, that would be cheaper
Yeah.
then. Like, why don't we do that? And
Interesting that that was kind of your first thought was
I was like, why aren't we
hospitality or
using real
hospitality.
tequila?
Yeah, yeah.
These margaritas are flying off the shelf, but they're not even really drinking
Oh my
tequila. And
gosh.
now I understand why everybody had headaches and got
They
sick.
tasted good. I love tequila, so I still love tequila from then. So, what do you think it was? So, what was it about it that you kept going? Like to the next thing that was it just money and you could earn some money, or
Well,
was there something at Benny's Burritos that was like, oh, I like this kind of thing?
well, it's like New York City. It's like you got to make money, and
Yeah.
so I started it as the money. I liked alcohol, like I liked drinking. I wasn't like an alcoholic or anything like that. But like I enjoyed the bar, and my brother Danny kind of like would take me out to different bars and teach me things like, cool, this is, you can tell what's going on behind a back bar or learn about spirits by you seeing everything grouped. Like all the gins are together, all the bourbons are together, all the tequilas are together, and the rums are together. So that's how I got familiar with brand names and stuff like that. And then I had an old college friend, Pat Ryland. He was a bartender in Seattle, and he was working at a comedy club like across from the Pike Place Market in downtown Seattle. I can't remember the name of it, but I asked him to send me some of his recipes. I was like, "Can I look at these recipes and try to study?" And I'm not kidding. I would say probably half of the drinks had 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream in them, and I was like, "Are you a bartender or a soda jerk? Like, I don't understand this." And so that taught me not to go one way. And I went the other, and people had given me like Mr. Boston's, bartending guide, and I had like picked up. That was like the first bartending book I think I ever had. Not much help, but that was more helpful in ordering drinks when I was at a bar than it was making drinks. And I just kept going and like working in bars because you were able to make money. It's like they say, it's the golden handcuffs. You get to walk out with a fistful of cash at the end of the night. So that's always a good thing. And then I really just enjoyed the craft of cocktails. And I was trying to think, it all kind of changed for me. Like it was like in 2002, I think 2004 or whatever. It was like George Bush got elected president, and I was like, I got to get as far away from the United States as I can without actually leaving the United States. So
Oh,
I moved to Hawaii, and I spent about 6 months there, and I spent enough time to come back for George Bush's second term. And I was like, well, the world's going to need a cocktail, and I need a job, and so I had reached out to a friend of mine, Jerry Banks. She had, I had worked for her before at this little place. I think it was called Lemu. It was very short lived, but Jerry like really kind of inspired in me to like care about cocktails, and she had turned me on to Charles Schumann's American Bar and Dale's first, Craft of the Cocktail, the original version.
right.
And those were like the two craft books that I started with. And Dale's, like, I just rifled through that thing. So much so that I had to take it to Kinko's and get it spiral bound because all the pages were falling out of it. And everything was like, all the corners were folded and stuff like that. And I had done some time at Boulay
Oh God, I
which
love
was more
Sinatra.
about wine than it was about
Yeah.
cocktails, but it gave me a chance to like, play around with Dale's recipes and make some drinks. And when I started working with Jerry at Lemieux, it was like really kind of taking things to another level. And when I got back from Hawaii, in the early 2000s, Jerry was opening a place called Juniper Sweet. And I had just reached out to her, and she was like, "Yeah, come aboard." And they were putting together this place, and it pretty much fell apart like
Mm.
after opening. Like we did friends and family, and I remember Dale DeGroff and Audrey Saunders. Dale DeGroff showed up at the bar, and like I plotzed. I was freaking out making a drink for Dale DeGroff. Um, and the next day, Jerry was no longer. It was the end of her contract, so she was gone, and the place just fell apart real quick. And so I reached out to Jerry and I was like, "Hey, I'm new back in town. I had just moved back from Hawaii. I was like, I don't know anything about where to go or who to talk to for cocktails." I was like, "But I really love what you do." I was like, "Can you just point me in a direction, like people that I should talk to?" And so she's like, "I have this friend, Audrey Saunders. She's opening this place called Pegu Club." I was like, she gave me her information. I was supposed to reach out to her. And I decided to like, I was looking up Dale on the internet and I came across his website and I was like, his email is on the website. I was like, this is insane. So I sent him my resume, told him, I was like, "Hey, I really love what you do." I was like, "Where can I go to apply for a job that makes cocktails and cares about cocktails the way that you do?" And then I did the same thing and the same day, and I sent my resume to Audrey. I was like, "Hey, I'm a friend of Jerry's. She recommended I talk to you." And I found out later that Audrey sent my resume to Dale, and Dale sent my resume to Audrey at the same time. And so, a couple of days later, Jill DeGroff, Dale's wife, reaches out to me, and she's like, "Brian, how would you like to work with?" I was like, "Yes." And Dale was doing
Love
some event under the 59th Street Bridge, and
that.
at the time he was, uh, I think he was working with Cuervo Grand Centenario. And I went in there, and that's where I met Julie Reiner for the first time. I met Leo DeGroff for the first time, and I remember walking into that place and there was Dale in the front greeting some woman in like a neck to toe white mink coat, and she was shaking his hand like he was some sort of celebrity, which I had never seen before. Because most of the time, growing up as a bartender in New York City, it was like, "So what else do you do? Like,
Right.
are you an
Of
actor? Are you a
course.
musician or something else?" And I was like, "No, I'm just a bartender." And so to see the incredible amount of respect that was shown towards Dale was really inspiring. And then at that event, it was the first time I'd ever worked a cocktail event, and Dale gives me his like zester or his little peeler, and I had to peel hundreds of like little citrus spirals to hang on every cocktail. Like my rings were just getting filled up with citric acid. Like you couldn't even see the grooves in my rings anymore. There was so much acid in there. And halfway through the event, Dale comes back, and I'm working with Leo. It's the first time I've met him. First time working with him. Great kid, literally an apple off the tree. He's just like his dad. He's amazing. And Dale comes in, pours three shots for me and Leo and him, and we do a shot of Cuervo. And I was like, I could get used to this. This is pretty cool. And so from there, I got an interview for Pegu Club,
Mhm.
and it was uh, it was in the basement of Flatiron. So that's where I got to, I briefly met Julie at this event, and then Julie's there running the place. I find out she grew up in Hawaii, so like there was kind of a kinship there. And I remember sitting in the room in like with Audrey and talking to her, and we were flipping through Dale's book, and I was like, "This is so cool." I was like, "Everything I'm read about, you're going to have at your bar." I was like, "Cool, those cheesy little spoons with the red knobs on them, the big ice, the stuff like that." Like it was really amazing, and Audrey was just so nice to me and really gave me the break that I needed. And then going into Pegu Club was was incredible. I mean, Audrey really, she pushed me, sometimes she pushed me hard, sometimes I pushed back harder. And, there was definitely a mother-son relationship between the two of us. And I got to, it was like being a guest musician for like the Rolling Stones. I was like, you look back at it now, it's like Toby Maloney was running the bar, Phil Ward was there, Chad Solomon was there, Jim Meehan was there, Sammy Ross joined us a little bit later, Jim Kearns was there. We had a young lady. She didn't last very long, but there was a woman that was a part of the original staff. Eric Simpkins was part of the original staff. It was amazing, and I just had such an incredible time there. And in the beginning, I was by far not even close. I was by far the least experienced bartender there. Everyone else either knew Audrey, knew all these classic cocktails, and I was just trying to learn from everybody. And Phil was such a quickly became my work wife. Phil and I were probably inseparable for years after that, between Pegu Club and Death and Company. Just learning from each other. And Toby, sorry about that, Jesus. Toby Maloney, as the head bartender, it's where I started my cocktail books, was at Pegu Club, because I was reading, I think it was like the Savoy cocktail book. And in the introduction, they talked about how they gathered all the recipes for this book was through one bartender that had written down a lot of the recipes, and obviously that's something that's happened, throughout the entire history of bartending. And so I would literally stand behind Toby Maloney and be like, "What are you making? Like, tell me what you're doing." And like, I think like one of the first things he taught me was like the Jack Rose and like the Ward 8. And and then all the other bartenders started teaching me drinks, and I was writing them down. And then like I went early on at Pegu Club. Ben Doherty from Zigzag, one of the owners of Zigzag, came. He was in New York City for like a food and wine shoot or something like that. And I met Ben, and I had met him before when I came back from Hawaii. I came through Seattle for a little while, and I met Ben, a friend of mine, Gretchen. She took me to Zigzag. She's like, "I think you're gonna like this guy." And like, I missed out getting a job there. If I literally by days they just hired somebody, and if they hadn't, who knows where my career would have been if I got a chance to work with Murray Stenson and Ben and Casey Fitch at the time. But Ben came to New York, and he sat down at the bar and he goes, "Brian, be humble and work in service. Do those two things, and I think you'll be okay." And he just kind of explained, obviously humility is self-explanatory, but working in service, he's like, "Brian, you'll get the repetitions over and over and over again, and you'll learn all these cocktails." And I was like, "Cool." And I mean, I've taken that advice and run with it for my entire 30-year career. You have to put a crowbar between me and the bar to get me out of service. Like, that's where I want to work. I don't want to be on point in front of a bunch of people. I just want to be in service, rocking out cocktails all night. And so I did that. And when I went to Zigzag, like I went home for Christmas or something like that, and I sat down at the bar at Zigzag, and Murray had like put a reserve sign out for me. And of course, there's water waiting for me as soon as I got in the bar. Murray like put a drink in front of me, and then Ben came up, and they used to, they probably still do this. They have little blank white coasters at Zigzag, and they write all their recipes on them. And Ben came up and put the stack of house recipes on one side and gave me blank coasters on the other and a pen. And he goes, "Take what you want." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I was like, I just started writing recipes. And when I came back to New York, I had, we're all wearing aprons, and like my aprons are filled with Zigzag recipes. And I was just like passing them. They're like, "Brian, what's that one that you got?" And I was like, I don't think we had learned I think Ryan Majarian is who taught us all how to make the last word, because he was from the Northwest as well. But I had other drinks that people they were like, "Oh my God, these are amazing!" And then I would just using Ben's advice. It was like, cool. I'd pick one recipe. So if somebody wanted something that was off the menu, I'd have one recipe, and I would just keep recommending that drink and making it over and over and over again, and
Right.
then learning how to. And that's how I learned to make drinks. And yeah, that was kind of my start at Pegu
So,
Club.
so when you went to, say, from Pegu to Death and Co., you know, you went from, as you said, like being kind of the lowest on the totem pole at the Pegu. Now you know a lot of stuff at Death and Co. What do you think you took from Death and Co. to then, take on? What do you think you learned from that experience to then
Well, it
go
was a
on?
weird, look, I was at Pegu Club for a year and a half, so I had the beginnings of a foundation, but by no stretch of the imagination was I any sort of rock star or anything like that. But I did have an opportunity through a friend of mine, James Stewart. There, I can't. There was a chance for me to like run a bar program at an inn. I think it was like Gramercy or something like that,
Ah, okay.
and that I was like, and I like me and Phil Ward and Jim Kearns were all leaving at around the same time. Like within a month period, it was like Phil left, then
Yeah.
Jim left, and then I was the last one to leave, and I was supposed to go to take over this program at Gramercy, but the chefs. I think like couldn't get their visas or something like that. So the place just kind of like fell apart. And so I was scrambling for a job now that I had decided to leave Pegu Club. And at one point, Gold Bar was opening up. And that was kind of funny because like I went in to do an interview with like the owner and like I sat down and he's behind like a big desk and he's like, "Why are you awesome?" And like immediately I was like, this guy's a total douchebag.
Yeah, this is not for me.
I was like, I'm not awesome. I can be honest, and I'm not insulting myself. I'm like, I just don't think I'm cool or awesome or anything like that. And I'm fine with that. Of course, I didn't get the job, but I was also later I realized, oh, the people that didn't get hired were the older ones. Okay, everyone was in their 20s, and those of us in our late 30s were not at this bar, and so. I was scrambling and I knew that Phil had gone to Death and Company and in true Phil fashion, it was like he got interviewed the first time and then he came back two more times and he interviewed Dave Kaplan, the owner. Like he was like, why should I come work for you? That's how awesome Phil is. And so when it just happened to be like I sat down and I talked with Dave and Phil and they were like cool like this looks great and I don't think they had anything open at the time and then one of their bartenders kind of went off the rails and they fired him and then I came in like basically a month after Death and Company. I think excuse me, it opened with this other bartender and Joaquin Simo and Phil. And those were the three. And then I came in a month into it, and yeah, then it was just the three of us running Death and Company, along with well, an amazing wait staff there as well. Jessica Gonzalez, who's now an incredible bartender and manager and icon in the industry. She was a cocktail server then. She just killed it. She was amazing.
Well, when did you, now, just so everyone knows, you did a tropical drinks night. You have your own bar, the Polynesian, which is tropical drinks. When did you decide to start kind of focusing on those?
So there was a time I got my first consulting job. I was working with Lynette Marrero. She had gotten this gig with this Akhtar Nawab, I believe was the name of the chef, and he was like this superstar chef, and he was opening an Indian place on 8th Street, West 8th Street, called the Elitaria. And I was looking at the food, and I was like, well, I think rum and like tropical drinks would go really well with this. I was like, that could be fun because I mean, early on in my days in Pegu Club, Audrey had cocktail books behind the bar, and I picked up Beach Bum Berry's Grog Log. I thought Bum was dead. I thought he was one of those old people that I was like, oh, cool, this is like an old vintage book. Like, this guy's dead. I was like, cool. But I just figured he was like Don the Beachcombers. Like, this guy's
Yeah, yeah.
long gone. I mean, I have a history of realizing that people are alive that I actually thought was dead. I thought Charles Schumann was dead as well. I was in Germany and talking about him, and I was like, "Oh, it's great." And the guy's like, "I work for Charles Schumann." I
Right,
was
right.
like, "Hi, I'm the ugly
He
American."
just
Sorry.
made your drink, right?
Yeah. Um, but I had seen Bum's books and I really liked them. And then around the same time, Sip and Safari was coming out, and Bum had done an interview with the New York Times, and he said, "You can't get a decent zombie in New York City."
Right.
And
I
so
heard you say that.
I
Yeah.
took that as a challenge. I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I worked really hard at it, and I got doing research and stuff like that. Like Bum's books were like breadcrumbs, that just kind of like led me down a trail and a rabbit hole that I went into. And I remember one of the cooler things, as close to tiki history as I've probably ever gotten, was I found this company. I think maybe Lynette had actually maybe led me to it, but it was a company called Roskins Incorporated, and they made orgeat, and they made a bunch of other syrups. But the research that I had done, people had pointed like, this is the orgeat. This is like good stuff. You should try to get. And I looked at the website, and there's like a company picture of just like all these doddering old white men, and then there is this Filipino who's like in a sharkskin suit and sunglasses, and I was like, that guy's amazing. Who is this? And I found out that it was Bob Esmino, who was one of the original bartenders that worked with Don the Beachcomber. It was in Bum's book Sip and Safari, and I was like, this guy is so cool. I was like, oh, okay. So I started ordering a bunch, I got a sample bottle because I was talking to his brother-in-law. I think his brother-in-law's name is Kenneth. And he sent me some samples. And then I was like, cool. I was building my Mai Tai around his orgeat. And then all of a sudden, like one day, like I'm at Elitaria and I'm like, we're not open, but I'm like setting up the bar, and somebody, like the host or something like that, answers the phone and is like, Brian, the phone's for you. And I was like, the phone's for me? I was like, it was the time of cell phones. I was like, who's using a landline? And she's like, it's Bob Esmino. And like, I get on the phone and I was like, hello? And it was he was just such a nice guy. And he's like, you're using our products. He's like, you could be my salesman out there. And I was like, I'm a bartender. I'm not interested in working for a brand or anything like that. I was like, but thank you. I was like, this is amazing to talk to you. Just like such a super nice, cool, passionate guy. Helped me with the syrups, would send me samples and stuff like that. And it was just like, wow, this is as close to meeting Don the Beachcomber as I'm ever going to get. And I kept running into it. Just kept running deeper and deeper into tiki, and it was just something that was just different. We had all done classic cocktails and stuff like that, and I love them, but I wanted to do something different, and like I joke around with some of the guys that tease me and be like, you and your tiki drinks, I was like, well, I think it's really cute the way you guys balance 3 ingredients. I was like, try
Right.
balancing 8 to 12. Let me
Right, to
know.
make it taste good, man.
Let me know when you want to take the tricycle, the training wheels off your bartending skills and see if you can make a tiki drink. And then that's kind of like where Tiki Mondays came from. Was first of all, I had left Death and Company, and I was actually sitting at Lonnie Kai, Julie Reiner's bar, that people were like, "Oh, is this a tiki bar? Is this not a tiki bar? I don't get it." Julie's like saying it's not really a tiki bar. I was like, Julie's bar was exactly what Julie said it was, which was like going into someone's home in Hawaii, which I had done. Like I had lived in Hawaii. I was like, cool, this is she is describing exactly what she said it was. And the drinks were great. And I was like sitting at the bar once, and Julie was just like, Brian, why don't you do something that everyone wants you to do, and that is make tiki drinks. And she offered me the downstairs space of Lonnie Kai, because it wasn't always that busy. And like Mondays was like a day when no one was doing anything. It was the day that bartenders had off and didn't have anything to do. So I was like, okay, cool. I have three rules. I was like, she's like, cool. What are they? And I was like, I get to make whatever I want to make. I get to dress however I want to dress, and I get to play whatever music I want to play. Done. She was like, fine, like, cool. Really, those are your three
Yeah.
requests? Yeah, great. Like, she was very accommodating. And like the first time I did it, Julie was my was worked alongside me, and I think we had like five people show up, one of which was Dave Kaplan and Alex Day, And at one point, Julie was sitting on the other side of the bar drinking tiki drinks because I didn't need her, Like we served maybe like I think like half dozen, maybe a dozen people the entire night, and then it just slowly over time just grew into this amazing beast, and it was a chance for me to not being behind any specific bar, I was just like, there are so many great people that either I had worked with or I want to work with. And I just kind of like cast a very wide net, starting off locally, just grabbing New York bartenders and stuff like that. Friends of mine, Jim Kearns was kind of a big influence as far as like people I wanted to work with. Like Jim and I worked together at Pegu Club, so we hadn't worked together in years. And I was just like, Jim's to me a foxhole bartender. Like when I'm in the middle of war and I'm being bombarded and killed with cocktails, Jim's the guy I'd want next to me because he would I know we would come out alive on the other side. And so Jim's been a guest bartender with me for several times, and other people started coming. It was like once word got out, it was like this is fun, and they're like, he's listening to rock and roll and he's wearing a skirt and his shirt has no sleeves on it. It's like, and then we started getting into makeup and like things just got crazy and fun. And it was just a chance for bartenders to flex their muscles, and bring like different styles to tiki, excuse me, and to help expand the bounds of what a tiki drink is. Like it's more than just a bunch of juices and rums thrown together. I mean, for me, sometimes it's just like you take a sip and you're like, I could be on a beach now.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like that's what this reminds me of. And doing stirred drinks and different spirits and then just everybody got excited and it was like, some people like Bum had never bartended before, until he did a Tiki Mondays and that kind of inspired him to like open his own bar. Garrett Richard was like somebody that just came in and started liking cocktails, and then all of a sudden Garrett's like pitching ideas, and he was a guest bartender with me, and now look where Garrett is. He's like the king of the world now with tiki, or tropical.
It's really hard not to love one of those cocktails. It really
It's
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're fun. It's like dancing at a wedding. It just kind of happens
Yeah.
anywhere, and people just they fall into it and they lose all their inhibitions, and like that's the great thing I really like about tiki is like even the fans of it. There's like some that are fans of the clothing, and some are fans of the culture, and some are fans of the drinks, and some are just fans of like I just want to be around fun people and have good drinks.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's like it's a wide net, and like people they really get into it. Like when I was one of the nicest things that was said to me was at I was at Mother's Ruin, and that was and our setup there was like weird because it was like their lunch was ending and then like a bunch of weird motley looking guys come in skirts and sleeveless shirts and we're like setting up the bar and doing decorations like in the middle while service is going on. And there was one woman that came in one day and she's like, I saw you guys like a couple of weeks ago and I was scared to come in and I decided to come in anyway. And she's like, I felt better when I left than when I came in. And I was like, cool, I'm done. Great. Thank you. That's an incredible compliment. I was like, that's basically what bartending is all about. So I was
It was
like,
the best night of her life,
yeah,
right?
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but she was having a good time. And I was like, and I get it because, fat middle-aged guy dressed in a skirt and a sleeveless t-shirt, like, yeah, that's probably not the place you want to be. But like once you taste the drinks and you see that everybody's having fun, and I've had so many great people. It has truly been an honor for all the years. And it's not over. I mean, I would still do Tiki Monday if I wasn't really busy at my current job. But
Which we're going to
yeah,
get onto right now,
yeah.
which is what I was going to say. You've just led this, by the way, you've just made it so easy for me. For someone who, is a self-described pirate and creates all these fantastic tropical drinks that make you feel like you're on an island with sand and water. How did you find yourself in the middle of the woods in New Jersey at the Stockton Inn? As people will know from my introduction, that is very close to my heart because we have a house about 10 minutes away, which is crazy, and led me to you and this podcast interview. So, how did the Stockton Inn come calling? And
Well,
I
it,
just have to say, though, looking at the cocktail menu, which we'll get to, it is a history of your life here, and there are some tiki cocktails on here,
yeah,
or tropical cocktails, whatever you want to call them.
there's,
So
it
tell
was,
me about your relationship with the Stockton Inn. How did that happen?
well, it started with back in 2023. I was coming back from St. Lucia, where I had lived for about 8 months, running a bar down there. I created a friend of mine, Steven, opened this bar. I designed the program, ran it, trained the bartenders, and then that contract ran out. And so I kind of came back to New York. Um, Probably a little bit with my tail between my legs, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I haven't lived in New York City for years or for months, and New York changes all the time. And I was basically staying with my brother in my niece's room. She had just gone off to college for the first time, for the first time in her life. And my brother was, and my sister-in-law, my brother Danny and my sister-in-law Kara, they were kind of like, well, why don't you come here and stay with us? They had a little bit of empty nest syndrome, so they lost their wonderful daughter Sadie, and now they had a 54-year-old child, man child, staying in the room. And I was really struggling trying to figure out where I was going to go. I was really between a rock and a hard place. It was tough financially. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And my good friend Nathan Wooden, we used to work together at ZZ's, and he was the GM of Carbone and ZZ's. One of my best friends in the world, and Nathan was being offered the GM job, or he was interviewing for the GM job at the Stockton Inn, and his sweetheart of a man, he was like, "Cool, if I take this job, I want Brian Miller to be the head bartender and like run the beverage program." And so I went in. He brought me out to Stockton for an interview, and I met with Steve, the owner, and Anthony Rudolph, who's the managing partner, and Chef Bob Truitt. And we just talked, and it was kind of cute because like Steve didn't really know anything about cocktails. He's more of a wine guy, and so he's like really sweet, like asking me questions about Death and Company and stuff like that. Well, tell me about this and da da da. And it was a really nice interview, and he was just a really kind and thoughtful person. And Anthony comes from per se, being Thomas Keller's right hand man. Once again, for me, it was a little bit like being back at Pegu Club. I was like, wow, I am by far the least qualified person in this room. I was like, this is really interesting, because Bob's a Michelin starred chef. And so,
I think you're being a little modest there.
well,
Okay, all right.
look, I don't have any major
Okay.
awards like any of these guys do, so it can be intimidating. But they Nathan ended up not taking the job, and Anthony was like, are you guys a package deal?" And I was like, "I'm a grown man, I can make my own
Right.
decisions." I was like, I really like Stockton, and then Nathan hooked me up with Anthony, and Anthony was consulting at this place called Casa Cruz, and they needed their menu fixed. So Anthony was kind enough to be like, "Brian, why don't you come in and consult for a couple of months while we figure things out at the Stockton Inn? You can make some money and get on your feet, and then we'll try to figure a contract out." And so I had done my research. I had looked at the area. I thought it was really beautiful. Like I spent the first couple of months. My brother Danny has a place in Narrowsburg that I spent like the first 2 months of COVID up there, basically like chopping wood and hanging out and eating amazing food cooked by my brother and sister-in-law. And so being out in the country, like I liked it. Like that wasn't, that it hasn't been as big of a culture shock. Like landlady, Tony, is like, "How does it feel like to live in the middle of nowhere?" I was like, "You do realize I lived in the Caribbean, right? I was in the middle of the ocean, you know." So,
And it's
uh,
only an hour and a half from New York. So let's,
yeah, and it's only an hour and a half. And I mean, they have things
and
here
there's a
like the
bus
Amazon, which is
directly
really
there
nice.
to Port
Oh,
Authority. I've taken that bus many
yeah,
times.
there's modern conveniences here that I didn't
Yes,
have in the
exactly.
Caribbean.
It's one of
So,
the most
uh,
sophisticated areas. But
it
did you
was.
know the history of the Stockton Inn and the link to
I
the
didn't.
like
I
Rogers and
knew.
Hammerstein and
I kind of like picked up a few of those things, but I
uh-huh.
didn't really know. It wasn't until that I accepted the job and then I reached out to Audrey and I was like telling her what I was up to and like what I was doing. And Audrey was like, "You gotta like delve into the history and like
Uh-huh.
get to know this place." And so I really did, thanks to Audrey like pushing me to do that. I just, because I when I was in the inn, when I finally accepted the job, like Anthony started to bring me up here. We were commuting from the city for a couple of weeks, and I knew that I was onto something special when I enjoyed every time we came up.
Uh-huh.
Like there was
It is a
something
wonderful area.
that I just really, really enjoyed about it, and it was also a great time to get to know Anthony and hear some stories from Per se and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And I just and we started, the people that were involved were like really amazing high-end professionals. And then I was like, "Anthony, I need a place to stay. Like, where am I going to stay?" And he looked at one place. He sent me one link. I looked at it. I was like, "This place looks amazing. I'll take
All
it."
right.
And he helped me take the place. Like I said, my landlord, Tony, and her son, Rhett, like they did it, and Rhett's fiance, Charlotte, they did an amazing job, like renovating this place.
Uh-huh.
And I love it. I'm like living in a house. I have an attic. Like, I'm, as the kids say, adulting now. I have couches and furniture and cars and stuff like that. So it was really great to like be here. And then I just started to immerse myself in learning about the inn, its history, the cocktails and stuff. Actually, Kate Sheldrick, who is our events and hospitality manager, she had done some research. She's like a Jane of all trades. The woman does everything. She designed our wine menu, but she like sent me an old menu from when this place was Colligan's. And so I was looking and studying all the old drinks in there. Some drinks I just couldn't figure out. The Delaware Valley Sling. I don't know what that is. I tried to reach out to Wondrich and I never heard back from him, but I was like, cool, dude. Like, I was just trying to figure out what some of these drinks are.
Yeah, if anyone listening knows what that is, do
Yeah,
write in.
please.
Right.
I would love to know and see how I can make
Yeah,
that drink again.
it's been closed for so long, and I think I went once when it was open, and then it's just been closed for ages. So the minute, it's these are tiny country towns. So when you hear one thing, you hear, oh, the Stockton Inn's being redone. A lot of people are wary that it's going to be too fancy, too this, not feel like the spirit. Now, I haven't been yet because I'm going in a couple months. No, in a month. So hopefully seeing you face to face.
So,
Everyone is giving me such a wonderful report. So, it sounds great.
I mean, it's a project that's been going on for a couple of years.
Yeah,
They've sank a lot of love into it. They've hired the right people. The management team is outstanding.
sounds like it.
We have Kate Sheldrick, we have Kate Hanley, we have Chip Dowd, and from Bob, Rakaya Ning, who's our maitre d'. Like, we have an amazing group of people that are working in there, and we are all led by Anthony, who is. I've been very lucky. Nathan Wooden has always been an incredibly influential person in my life, my bartending life, dealing in this profession. And then he introduces me to Anthony, who I write his phrases down. I have a little notebook that's like Anthonyisms, things that he says that really resonate with me. And through this whole process, it's like I feel like I'm becoming not only a better bartender and bar professional, I'm becoming a better person.
Oh,
And I'm just really grateful for this team that I'm with. And the owners, Steve and Cheryl, are just such amazing, thoughtful, overly caring people. Like,
oh no, don't say
everyone was so nice to me. I'm just not used to that. Like, I'm
that.
used
You've
to
been in New York too long.
the owners that act like kings and queens and like, you're my loyal subject, do whatever
Yeah.
I tell you. And Steve and Cheryl are not that way. The thing that I really appreciate the most, one of the things I appreciate the most about them is they're like, Brian, it's your bar. You run it the way you want to do it. And like we immediately, like the first thing when I got the job was like thinking of things. It was like one, like the first drink I thought of when I was going to put on this menu was the Bensonhurst, Chad Solomon's drink. I was like, this is going to be a bar. It's a tavern. This is where people go up and like make deals and hang out all night and talk about drinks. And the Bensonhurst is one of my favorite cocktails. And I also told Steve, I was like, I'm not carrying Tito's. I won't do it. And he's like, fine, don't carry it, you know? And I gave him, I was like, look, I don't like liars. I don't like vodka. I was like, cool. I don't want to, and the fact that he supported me in that, and it's pretty notorious throughout the inn that I don't like vodka. So, and I learned that at an early age. I won't
But if
say.
someone wants a vodka tonic, you will
But
serve
if
them.
somebody
I heard.
wants a
Yes,
vodka drink,
yes, of
great.
course.
Yes, cool. I will
There is vodka
absolutely.
behind the bar.
It's great. Yeah, somebody told me. They were like, Brian, how come you don't like vodka? And I was like, because I like flavor.
But back to the menu, because I digress from the menu. I'm bringing us back in to now. I know we'll get to the Jack Rose in a second, but I see on the menu, by the way, for people who can't see it, you can go online to Stockton Inn and see it. But there's things that are in parentheses after them. And there's a bunch of Stockton Inn ones, the Misbehaving, the Mother's Little Helper. What else?
Those are
Yes,
those are
that's
my
on one
drinks
page.
without putting my name on the menu. I was
Oh,
like,
so those
well,
are your drinks. I wasn't sure
yeah.
if those were like original, like the Delaware Valley
No,
cocktail.
those are just we had made a decision. It was like, cool, we're not going to put my name on the menu, and then of course we changed that. And the introduction to the menu has my name on
All
it,
right, all
which
right.
is very nice. I appreciate Anthony doing that.
And then, of course, some Mai Tai Royale. We have the Planters Punch. We have the Pegu Club. So harking back,
Yeah,
it's like your history in a cocktail menu, really.
it was.
And the Jack Rose, which was in the Wall Street Journal, and
Yeah,
how you decided to use Laird's as well, which you said that people gave it a bad rap. Now I love apple brandy,
I
so
don't know. I didn't say they gave it a bad rap.
no, you're right. You didn't
I
say
was
that.
just surprised that people didn't know about it in New Jersey. I was like,
I
how
take
is
that back. Then people didn't know about it in New
yeah, they
Jersey.
just most and people don't know where Scobeyville is. They never heard of it. I mean, it's one of those little nut. I mean, I this was the thing I learned from Audrey. Like Audrey was the first one to bring in the Laird's Bonded, and then that became something that is behind probably almost every cocktail bar in New York City. Um,
I love it.
she
At Christmas I always make a pear apple punch thing with some ginger vodka that I make. And I always use Laird's when I was in the US. Of course I can't get it here. But yeah, so it's something that I knew about immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a delicious spirit. I think like I wrote a little blurb for the menu that we didn't use, but I was like, this is so Jersey. I was like, this is Springsteen and Bon Jovi like rolled into one. I was like, it's quintessential New Jersey, and that was a drink that I had seen on the old Colligan's menu. So like that, the Jack Rose, the El Presidente, the Planter's Punch, um, and the Zazarak were like the four drinks that were
Right.
on the Colligan's menu.
Okay.
And taking Audrey's advice was like, cool, I'm gonna bring those in. Um, I knew the Bensonhurst was a drink that I really wanted to put on the menu. The conference was just shooting fish in a barrel. I was like, cool, if I put the conference on the menu, I'm sure this is gonna be
Yeah.
fine. And it's probably one of the most popular drinks on the menu. And then I had to do a vodka drink, and I was just like, what am I gonna do? And Kate actually,
What's that?
she was like, oh, there's this great farm, Manoff's Farms. It was like they do amazing strawberries, and so like we just stocked up on strawberries, and I just made gallons of puree and then froze it. And the Manoff strawberries are incredible. They're like
Shout out to Amy. Love Amy.
yeah,
I
like
know her very
Driscoll,
well.
they were like, no, like Driscoll was a dirty four-letter word. Like, no, we're not carrying anything like that. We have all this local produce. We're going to use that.
Wait till you try their peaches
Yeah,
and the apples next year. You may be making your own apple brandy.
yeah,
Just the produce and the corn. Hopefully, you'll be able to make a cocktail out of corn. I know that sounds funny, but
we'll
there's
see.
nothing
Yeah,
like Pennsylvania, New Jersey corn.
it's it. I mean, it's such a great area, and like that's where like Chef Bob Truitt is like someone that I just kind of chase after, and with his standards and like the things he knows about food and stuff like that. I was like, the old fashioned relationship is like chefs are hungry, bartenders are hungry, chefs are thirsty. I was like, cool,
Right.
let's trade, and we have some amazing chefs there. Chef Goody and Chef Tennell are incredible and have been very helpful in inspiring me to be better at my job and giving me the right tools, fresh fruit, different spices, all that stuff. So it's a great synergy between the kitchen and the bar and management and everything.
So
It's such
how
a
long
nice.
have you lived there? When
I've,
did you move? When did you move?
May of last year
May.
is when I
Oh, May of
moved
last year.
there.
So you've had a good 6 months. You have seen. So I was going to be like, just wait till you have Maxima corn, man.
I've seen like the half-mile strip between my house and the inn, mostly,
Well, we'll
because
bring you some corn in
I'm
August
working
from
all the
Maxima.
time.
We'll
But I'm
take you there.
trying to branch out. I'm going to see some of the restaurants
It
and
only
bars.
gets better. It only gets it's a
Yeah,
really great place to work in food in any
yeah.
way. It's just
There's
amazing.
so many
I
fresh
actually
ingredients.
come back in August for peaches, corn, and tomatoes.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's why I come back. Also to see my mom, by the way.
And the microbrews are great. I mean, we literally have one down the block, Oddbird, which is amazing. Like I was like, wow, there's like a microbrewery just down the block from my house.
And it's
I
probably
have
not
to
the
get
only
used to
one
this.
in the
No,
area.
there's so much. It reminds me actually a lot of like Seattle back when I lived there, like when the micro brew boom was starting in Seattle, and the Northwest was kind of the epicenter. Now it just feels like Jersey is just loaded with amazing like microbrew beers.
And also the people there. Carversville, as I said, there's an inn and it's being redone. But before it closed, Thursday nights, the bar at the Carversville Inn and Friday just were mobbed. So with locals. So hopefully that's happening in Stockton. That you just are
It's
meeting everyone and it's all locals, and they're really enjoying having you there.
Yeah, they've been coming around. I mean, training my staff was like, cool. I know this is all different. I have some very young bartenders and I have some seasoned bartenders, and it's like, cool. I joke around. I was like, cool, there's the right way, there's the wrong way, and there's my way. Like, you guys are going to do things my way. And teaching them how to do things differently, how to stir, how to shake, how to use a jigger. Like, a lot of them had never done all that stuff before. And my team has come miles from when I first met them. And I was like, look, we're just trying to garner the trust of the locals. Like,
Right.
cool, it's going to be different. They're not going to recognize anything behind the bar. I had a guy yell at me because I didn't carry Tanqueray. And I was like, cool, I don't. Tanqueray, I think, is different. I carry Rogers gin instead. I was like, cool. I have substitutes for all the major brands that I'm like, and the people are slowly starting to come around and they're like it's resonating, and in some ways it's like the same old problem we had at Death and Company was like, cool, doors open at 5 o'clock and 5:05 the whole bar's full. And I mean, at the inn, it's we open at 5 o'clock. Actually, we open at 4:50 because they are lining up outside the door, and when they
So
come in it's
great.
like the running of the bulls at Pamplona. Like, they all just come into the bar and it's like two by two, like Noah's Ark. It's like two by two by two. They all sit at the front bar and it just gets packed really quick, which can kind of be overwhelming at times. But it's a good problem to have. And I mean, the people here have been really great, and the fact that they are just open to perhaps trying other things. And sometimes it's a matter of cool. The Jack Rose went from like I might sell four of them in a week. Like, it was probably the least popular cocktail on our menu. Put it in the Wall Street Journal. I'm selling 40 a night now,
Oh, no way.
and it's like, I'm still the same bartender. This is still the same drink, but because we're in the Wall Street Journal, all of a sudden you think it's okay.
Well,
So
I
it's kind
think
of,
it's a matter of, oh, okay, that gave it legitimacy. I think I'll try it now. If I'm going
yeah,
to have one drink, or I can only have two drinks. First, I want to have the one that I know. Oh, and maybe the second one, I'll try something I don't know. This time,
yeah.
you're like,
It's
okay.
it's it's just getting them to try. It's a little bit like when I first got here, there was a little bit of like shock of like when I was in St. Lucia, it's where I came up with my own term of like, it's Stockholm syndrome cocktails. You've been given such crappy cocktails for so long, that's what you're used to,
Hmm.
and that's what you want. And like in St. Lucia, it was like, how am I in the Caribbean on an island that produces rum, but the amaretto sour is the most popular drink,
Crazy.
and I couldn't put enough sugar in that drink. Like I could not satisfy. I was like, first of all, it's called a sour. Why is it, and everybody there had diabetes, and I was just like, it took me a month to get my amaretto sour recipe acceptable to the locals. But, I finally did. And then, like, coming here, there were just things like, why don't you have Sambuca? And I was like, because it's not 1980 and I'm not an Italian restaurant. Like, nobody drinks
Oh,
that
how
stuff
funny.
anymore.
How
Like,
funny.
and there were
Uh-huh.
just things, that people at first were upset about, and then like they came around. And so like
Oh,
I was carrying Tom olives at the bar when I initially got here.
okay.
Tom olives is, the beautiful olive that's a cross between a
Yeah.
tomato and an olive. And I like them. I think they're delicious, but they also like hold together. Because like to me,
Yeah.
I hate getting an olive in a martini that's held together basically by the cocktail pick. And at first, people were like, "What are these city olives?" And I was like, "I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you mean by city?" It was like that old salsa commercial that was like, "This salsa's made in New York City." Like everyone was just kind of freaking out about it. And so then I had to change, and I brought in Castelveltrano olives, and then people were like, "Where are those other
Yeah,
olives?" And
yeah,
I was like,
exactly. I knew you were
"You
going to say
just said you
that.
hated them. Now you like them." I was like, "What is this?" So now currently, I'm carrying two different olives, and if you're special enough to ask for, "Hey, where are those city olives?" then great, I will give them to you. But
All right.
it's
That's
just, it's funny how that is. But it's like we're all, it's like a dance. It was like at first we were stepping on each other's toes, and now it's like the customers are coming or the guests are coming around, and it's like cool. They're like really enjoying it, and that's like inspiring to be like, cool, you guys should expect more out of your cocktails. When you order food, like you're like, where's this chicken and who is
Right.
its parents and what did they do and were they
True.
raised right and this and that. But it was like when it comes to alcohol, it's just like, just give it to me. I just give me my drug. That's all. And I was like, you can ask for more. You can get fresh juice. You should know where these products come from. You also want to support the great people that make these spirits.
Right.
It's like cool. That's what you want. You want good things. You should support. I always tell people, I was like, cool, if you're gonna put a drug in your body, you might as well put a good one in there. Like,
Yeah.
like make sure
Or
that you
yeah,
have
one that
you have
supports.
great.
And I yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think that once they know the kind of the pedigree of yeah, this strawberry liqueur is made from Amy strawberries, guys, not one that is Italian. Even though we love Italian stuff, it didn't have to import it. You've got it here, guys. This is your neighborhood, and I think
Yeah, we
once
do a
they
lot of.
understand that or
We try
get
to do a
that,
lot of stuff supporting the local
yeah,
community. Like my well vodka for a while was Sourland vodka. Unfortunately, they shuttered their doors, which was kind of
mm,
disappointing to me. I really liked the guys there were really nice and amazing. I was like, cool. Like I don't care about vodka. I just want to make sure let's support the community, and it was good stuff. And I was like, great.
and there's so much also happening in Philadelphia, which is close by. There's,
Yeah,
tons of spirits coming out of there, and, it doesn't have to be all,
just
you
trying
know,
to shine a light on this community and
yeah.
and the farms and the people that are around here. It's like this is really great. Like honestly, if telling people that I live in Jersey, they're just like, "Ooh, what?" And I'm like, "No, man, I'm like in I don't know some sort of bubble that you just don't think of." The area that I live in, you probably wouldn't think is Jersey, and it looks mostly like upstate New York, like any other beautiful town. You drive an hour north to New York, you come down here, and it's south, and it's incredible. I mean, New Hope is beautiful, Bucks County, Lambertville is a great little town, Flemington is fun. Like, there's so much to love here, and it's just such a nice and simple, easygoing life,
It's
and I
it's
really
great.
enjoy it.
Now, yes, New Jersey gets a bad rap. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they are lucky to have you,
I'm happy
behind
to
the
be.
stick. So,
I'm a very lucky person. I'm lucky to be here.
well, this is great. Well, thank you so much for talking to me about this. It's
My
been,
pleasure.
I can't wait to visit you.
Yeah.
In a couple
Come,
weeks, I'll be there, everyone.
come have a Mai Tai. They're
I will.
delicious.
I'm going to have more than just that. And the Jack Rose and the El Presidente and the Flanders Punch. You'll see me a couple days in a row.
That sounds
This has
great.
been so great to chat.
Cool. Thank you
And
for having me, Susan. I really appreciate it.
absolutely, I'm so glad our worlds collided. And
Yeah.
everyone, get down to the Stockton Inn. All right.
Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Thank you so much.